Hello everyone, today's review is about 7artisans 35mm 0.95. So this lens has a really large aperture, it's 0.95. So this aperture is bigger than anything we're used to. This lens absorbs great amount of light, so you can shoot in harsh light conditions. You can shoot nice portraits with a really creamy bokeh, and it costs under $300. So these advantages, they're just obvious. But it has its peculiarities because it's designed only for mirrorless crop cameras. So you can use it on Canon EF-M mount, on Sony cameras, on Micro Four Thirds cameras, on Nikon, for example, Z50. But I'll test it on my Fujifilm X-T3. You can't mount this on crop DSLRs, so it's only for mirrorless, and again only for crop. Its equivalent field of view is 50mm, and the aperture 0.5 is roughly will give you roughly the same depth of field as 1.4 on the full frame. So 50mm 1.4 on full frame is similar to what you see with this lens. Let's have a closer look at this lens. So we have the box, the user manual. There is important advice that you have to turn on release without lens. You have to enable it. Otherwise, your camera just won't, the shutter button won't work. You press and nothing happens. The lens itself is made of metal. It feels just great in your hands because, well, it's well built. It has the metal lens mount, but unusually dark because usually it's white, and in this case it's shiny black. It has shiny black color, and you see how the aperture works. This lens has 12 blades. This is really uncommon and unusual because usually 9 blades is okay, but this has 12 blades. It means that if you close the aperture, the bokeh won't be nasty. So it's always will be creamy independently on which aperture you use. But if you buy such a lens, it's, well, mostly it will be interesting to shoot in this position. By the way, this ring is clickless. So it rotates it really smoothly, same as this focus ring is also very smooth. This is how it looks on your camera, and to me this design is just perfect. I think that you may just put it on a shelf and contemplate the beauty of this retro design, and to my eye well, it's ideal because some lenses are too modern for this camera, and this looks just fantastic. The people that you meet somewhere will think that you shoot old film with the old film camera and the old film lens. If you buy Fujifilm, I think that you have that feeling of aesthetics, and you want to go on with the lenses that continue that feel. But it lacks the lens hood, because in harsh light conditions it will lose contrast. Well, you'll see this later in my tests. In terms of its size and weight, I can compare it directly to the Viltrox 23mm 1.4. It's also a lens for Fujifilm. So in terms of sizes, you see they're quite similar, but this one is just a tiny bit bigger. But surprising to me that 7artisans is even heavier, though it is smaller, but it is heavier. And this is an autofocus lens, and this is manual lens. This is a great difference because on such apertures it's very important to have autofocus. Unfortunately, here we don't have it, but this lens is even cheaper, although it has 0.95 aperture. So now it's time to have a look at the photos that I've made with this lens. This lens produces really nice, pleasant portraits. It has very pleasant bokeh, but since it's manual focus lens, it's really tough to nail focus. You'll have lots of frames that are out of focus. Of course, it depends on your hands, how skilled you are in this, because autofocusing, oh sorry, focusing, no auto here, it's difficult. When you shoot somebody, it's not enough even to catch the focus with the focus ring. You have to maintain the right distance to your subjects. After you turn this wheel, you have to shift yourself, or well, you have to control your position and the position of your model, because every centimeter, I don't know, even millimeter in this distance, it affects what will have on your photograph. The depth of field is really shallow, so beware of this. And when thinking about this lens, you have to bear in mind that the biggest problem here is the focus. By the way, I had the 7artisans 35mm 1.2 lens, which is smaller, cheaper than this one, and well, surprisingly to me, it was much easier to focus with, despite that the aperture is quite close on both lenses. But the 1.2 version of the 7artisans 35mm was easier to focus. Bear this in mind. But that lens was a bit inferior in quality, because it wasn't that sharp at this one, but well, it was easier to focus with. In my comparison, I will try this lens and I will compare it with the Canon 50mm 1.2 on the Canon EOS R bodies. I'll compare the crop camera with this super light sensitive lens, and the full frame body was also super light sensitive lens. The great difference between them is that this lens has autofocus and is so easy to shoot with. On the camera that has eye autofocus, it just snaps in, just press the button and you have it in your focus. And with this lens you have to spend some time and check your photos, and many of them will be blurry, will be just a tiny bit, but out of focus, and this is not pleasant. You have to control yourself, you have to learn, study, you have to study manual focus. It depends on style of your photo shoot and whether you're eager to spend more time, to be patient. So let's go to photos and check how this lens performs. Let's have a look at the sharpness of this lens. So this shot was made at 0.95, and you see the eyelashes. Here I nailed the focus correctly, and you can judge, well, how sharp it is. Well, as for such type of portraits, I think that it's quite okay. If I would like more sharpen, I get added on post, and it will look well, quite sharp if I want to, but truly speaking, I don't want image of this kind. I like it natural the way this lens does it. Maybe just a tiny bit I can add some sharpness at 0.5, but nevertheless the photo is totally okay. So I wouldn't say that it has any significant problems, optical problems at 0.95. For example, this shot, you see the sharpness is at standard. The one thing that I did here is just push up the exposure, because it was too dark like this one, and that's all. And this is a great photo and I enjoy it. Well, we have a great model and well, it's nice. So this lens is very good for such type of work, such type of portraits. But if you work in harsh light, backlit conditions such as this one, you need the lens hood. These shots were taken inside a shopping mall, and you see that the background is a total mess, but nevertheless, when you have 0.95, you can blow it out just like this, and the photos will look great, well, independently on what you have on your back. This shot was made on the parking, so the light was really bad, but nevertheless I could shoot at ISO 800. And well, as for the focus, I think that here I didn't nail it. So I have lots of shots that are just a bit tiny out of focus. So if you look at them close up, well, you won't be satisfied. But if you look at just like this, well, it's okay. But it depends on what kind of perfection do you need. Because if you want the perfect shots that all will be in focus, you'll need an autofocus lens, not this one. This shot was made at f2, and again it's not totally in focus, and it's ISO 2500, so anyway it won't be as sharp as when you shoot at low ISOs. This portrait was made at 0.95, And as you see, the eyelashes are completely in focus, and well, I'm satisfied with this photo. You see the second eye is just a tiny bit out of focus, but it's not a great deal. And in general, well, I like the quality of this lens and this bokeh, because this situation was really tough. One more photo was a truly bad lighting, but well, I did it, I shot it correctly, but because of these bad quality lights, well, we don't see the skin anyway. So the lens is not everything that you need to get nice quality photos. So what are my conclusions about this lens? In general, I was really pleased with the image quality and with the overall feeling that it gives. It gives you that nice creamy bokeh, the portraits that have shallow depth of field and that have, I would say, almost full frame feeling. It's well, I was enjoyed by the pictures that it gives. This lens is made, it's a portrait lens. I wouldn't use it for something different, because nailing focus here is difficult even if you stop down the aperture. That's surprising to me, but even if you shoot at like f4, f8, it's nevertheless it's difficult to focus. I don't know why. Maybe optical design, optical scheme, something. Well, it has something to do with this. But as I have said, the previous 7artisans 35 1.2 was easier to focus, but it wasn't as sharp as this lens. This lens is enough sharp for portraits. If your photo is not sharp enough, well, the reason is more in your hands than in this lens. I know about the Nikon lens with the same aperture and same focal length, 35mm 0.95. But after testing this lens, well, my interest is quite low to the Nikon, because it costs twice as more as this one, and this lens does the job. It gives you those portraits, and well, it's also manual focus. In both lenses, the biggest problems for you is nailing focus. Focus is really troublesome with this lens. But if you know what you're buying, if you understand this problem, that it's difficult to focus, but nevertheless you want that picture that is really close to the 1.2 lens on the full frame. It was surprising to me that you can get a very similar picture to what you get on a full frame with a 51.2, not 1.4, but even 1.2. So, in terms of pictures, it's really great. Well, it lacks the lens hood, but you can find and purchase it separately. If you enjoy shooting female portraits, if you like that kind of artistic photography, if you're not in a rush, well, I can advise this lens. And personally, I like it more than, for example, the Fuji Non's portrait lenses, such as 56 1.2 or the 90mm f2. I've tested them. They are, in terms of quality, they're sharp, they have nice autofocus, maybe not the fastest on the market, but it works and it's okay. But the picture is not so creamy, and it's a bit technical, it's a bit boring to me. this lens produces interesting picture, as many, for example, there are older manual focus lenses that people buy because of their picture. They know that what they're dealing with, they know that they will have some time spending with the manual focus, but they go for it because they want this picture. And same situation with this lens. I think it's not for commercial work because it's not stable. You may get some shots out of focus which is not acceptable. If you do a commercial job, you have to be sure in what you do, and your equipment should work just like a Swiss clock. You press the button, you get the sharp result. It's not the case with this lens. You rely upon its focus mechanism. I repeat myself many times, but it's the biggest problem with this lens. 0.5, that is no joke for focusing. But for its price, indeed, well, it costs this money. Some people think that there is some cheating because such a wide aperture lens can't be that cheap, and that this number, it's just written here, but it's not the reality. Well, I have tested this, I've compared it to this lens, and it's true, this lens gets a little more light than this one, so it's quite true. But as for low light photography, sometimes it may help you, but again the biggest problem is the autofocus. If you shoot in bad light conditions, it will be difficult for you to nail that focus, and you'll push the ISO high, and nevertheless that you have this aperture, you'll have to push your ISO, and that picture won't be as sharp because of the high ISO levels. So the right thing is to get additional lighting with you. My opinion that this lens is designed to shoot indoor and outdoor still portraits with the natural lighting, because if you have studio lights, it's easier to shoot with an autofocus lens. So this is my review, and the links where you can buy this lens are included in the description below this video. See you in next videos.